Now, in just a moment, we're going to speak with Brandon Smith. He runs alt-market.com and other projects in the name of liberty, but he, among others, has been recently demonized by none other than the Southern Poverty Law Center. In their recent article, A Gathering of Eagles, Extremists Look to Montana, and it attempts to portray a tie-in between a number of neo-Nazis and supposed racists that they detail in this article, along with non-racist, pro-freedom, pro-constitution icons, including Stuart Rhodes, Chuck Baldwin, and many others, as well as Brandon Smith. And it's just the kind of typical demonization you expect to see. They specifically say Chuck Baldwin, a Baptist preacher who ran for president under the Constitution Party banner in 2008, moved 18 family members to Montana's Flathead Valley last fall after receiving what he called a divine message telling him the state was the tip of the spear in the fight for liberty. Then it goes on to bring up Stuart Rhodes, a Yale-educated lawyer, former Army paratrooper, and head of the conspiracy-minded Oath Keepers, also moved there. How he's laying the groundwork for a new militia and calling for citizens to adopt a barter economy to escape the bondage of U.S. currency. Then, without any break or context, it says neo-Nazi April Gade also transplants to the state and has issued a call for white nationalists to come home, quote unquote, to the Northwest. There is no relationship between these individuals, especially this neo-Nazi April Gade. Chuck Baldwin and Stuart Rhodes, on the other hand, I think, do. Now, Brandon Smith has pointed out in his article what a joke this all is and how, yeah, people who stand up for principles, especially the Constitution, may appear to be extremists, but that doesn't bear any relationship to National Socialists who want gigantic government and authoritarian control versus people who want freedom. Now, he also points out how what they're really upset about is that people like Chuck Baldwin are running for office in the state. He is running for lieutenant governor, and we will talk about the other candidate who's attempting to run for governor in Montana. And so now for more on the SPLC's crosshairs on the state of Montana, we turn now to one of these extremists, Brandon Smith. He's the founder of the Alt Market Project, the Safe Haven Project, and works in many other ways for the cause of liberty. Brandon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So why don't we get into this article and how they're trying to portray people seeking freedom and liberty in the state of Montana?
Well, really what we're dealing with is the SPLC, which poses as an organization determined to prevent racism or organizational racism, but really I see them as an extension, sort of a propaganda arm of the DHS now. I mean, they run a lot of the new training programs for police infusion centers across the country. Most of their rhetoric is based around not racism per se, but groups who are anti-state corruption. Anyone who opposes the establishment suddenly is lumped in with neo-Nazis, and that's really been their primary tactic for years. Is to anytime a group forms that's anti-corruption, anti-establishment, they write these hit pieces that lump us all in with neo-Nazis, extremists. They throw the term extremist around quite a bit. They never actually define what an extremist is in their articles, but if you go back to documents such as the MIAC report or the Virginia Fusion Center document, they tell you right there what they think an extremist is. It's anyone who puts a Ron Paul sticker on their bumper, or returning veterans. Pretty much it's completely arbitrary. Anybody who they think might be a patriot, they automatically demonize.
Yeah, and just like George Orwell said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So, of course, patriots who are talking about the Constitution will be viewed as extremists. But let's talk about that progression, because you mentioned the MIAC report, the Homeland Security reports, targeting returning veterans, targeting people who mention the Constitution or portray these logos from the revolutionary times and more. How has that shifted? Because they've really stuck with that theme and kind of beat the drum on that for many years. Now they're actually targeting protest groups from the left and the right.
Right, right. I think, you know, as far as the MIAC report goes, that was, you know, the exposure of that was enormous. And we really, you know, we created a lot of groundswell support for shutting that whole project down. Now the SPLC is coming back, and they're trying to they're calling for a reinstitution of all the guidelines that were within the MIAC report. I see very soon. I mean, we're seeing it in smaller cases, but very soon I see sort of a widespread effort on the part of not just the SPLC, but the DHS to begin implementing those profiling techniques against anyone who's anti-Fed, anti-establishment. So I think we're really on the verge of a move towards actual hardcore implementation of those profiling guidelines.
Now let's talk about the state of Montana in particular and why the SPLC has put focus on that area, because you've got a lot of well-known patriots moving there, yourself, Stuart Rhodes, and now Chuck Baldwin, who's even going to run for lieutenant governor, right?
Yes, yes. Bob Fanning and Chuck Baldwin are both running for the 2012 office in Montana, and I think Montana itself is sort of becoming a focal point for the movement, for the liberty movement, and I think that the SPLC has obviously noticed that, which is why they're producing these hit pieces now on a more regular basis, and they're focusing a lot on what we're doing. If you look at the SPLC's hate map, which is hilarious to me that they have a hate map, but they do. Go check it out. Montana actually ranks very low on their list of hates, or their spectrum of hate. And yet they focus so much energy and so much attention on Montana. And I think the reason for that is because there's a surge of liberty movement activity, which is not, you know, has nothing to do with racism. Obviously, we're all anti-Nazi. We hate National Socialists. But we're anti-corruption, we're anti-centralization, anti-establishment. So, you know, what they don't want, what the SPLC doesn't want, and what the DHS doesn't want is for liberty movement people to stand up, walk away from their computers, leave their houses, and begin meeting face-to-face and organizing for mutual aid and mutual defense. They do not want that. They hate that. So I say, you know, whatever the SPLC attacks or whatever the DHS attacks, we should keep doing that. Keep pushing that strategy. If they're afraid of it, then we should keep doing it.
And you hit the nail on the head right there in terms of the reversal of the portrayal of power grabs. They know the general public, if they hear this warning about extremists in Montana, won't know that neo-Nazi means someone who wants National Socialism, while they're always grabbing more and more federal power. So how could people who want liberty be part of that? But they know it's just a demonization tactic.
Exactly, exactly, and it's it's the same tactic that goes back for, you know, it's gone back for centuries. Anytime an elite minority comes into power, if they can't directly attack an opponent, they'll attack his character. If they can't debate you on fair ground, then they'll attack your character. They'll try to dismantle your character in the public eye, so that no one will listen to you. They'll call you insane. They'll call you a conspiracy theorist. They'll call you a racist. They'll call you a terrorist. You know, it's anything to get the public to not listen to what you have to say, and that's what the SPLC has been all about for years.
So knowing what your other work also focuses on, just in closing, talk about why it's important to disengage from the system that's become predatory in so many ways, from food freedom to our civil rights and on down the list, abusing the Constitution and more. Talk about how you advise people to create their own systems.
Well, the primary strategy of globalization and of elitism is centralization, and centralization requires the removing of options from a system until the populace is left with only one, your option, the option you want them to have. If we want to fight back against that, if we want to make a change, we can't continue participating in that system by those rules. Really, what we have to do is walk away from that corrupt system completely and form our own, build our own systems. In order to do that, we need to start decentralizing the economy, decentralizing governments, turning towards localism rather than globalism. And that can be done in a number of ways. My primary focus has been through barter networks, which allow people to trade goods and services without depending on the dollar. I think if we're not able to do that, then we're never going to break away from this system.
Right. And Edmund Burke, I believe it was, who said, all it takes for evil to triumph is good men and women to do nothing. And just laying down, being silent, and going along with these big globalized firms, buying from the box stores and more, is only making the whole system worse. So it's good to get the word out about that. And thanks for joining us, Brandon Smith. We're going to be back in a moment from break with more news. And then coming up, we also have Stuart Rhodes, the founder of Oath Keepers, joining us to highlight even more subjects pertaining to the curb on liberty and the attempt to demonize those fighting for it. Stay tuned. Infowars Nightly News.